Hello, I'm Alan. Welcome to the Guitar Shack. So today's video is a short one. It's on my On the Bench series, and it's just looking at a guitar that's come into the workshop and take you through what I do to it. So I haven't had a Strat on the channel for a while, and this is like the classic internet story about one of my customers has brought me a couple of his own guitars to do some work on, and he's brought me this, which somebody he knew was throwing it out. He said, "I'll have it," and he's brought it to me and said, "Do you fancy that in payment for the work you do on his guitars?" And the answer was yes, because I always like a hard luck case. And actually, um, this is a 1991, I think, Korean Squier Stratocaster. It's an S10 serial, which I'll do some research on. But it's interesting in a number of ways. I mean, it was an absolute state when it came in. And the reason is basically the neck was um, forward bowed a lot. The trem was lifted right up, and it was obviously far too high tension, string tension, and the action was about probably about half an inch. It was ridiculous. Um, so the first thing I did was look at the reasons for that, and the answer is because one of the tuners, the low E, is broken and it was stuck or it had been tuned right up to a really high pitch. And then the rest of the guitar had been roughly tuned to that. So the whole thing was sitting, I don't know, about four tones too high, hence the forward bow. So the first thing I did was just cut that string off because there was nothing else I could do with it. And then I've tuned the others, the remaining three that are on it, so I can do some nice little triads. I've tuned them down to a normal level, and just with that, it's straightened out a lot as you would expect. So I think it might well be savable. Um, if I just check the relief, it's currently sitting at 14 thou, which is high, but it's not ridiculous. You know, as long as the truss rod is actually working, then that'll quite easily take care of that. And obviously that's with three strings on it, with six strings on it, it'll put a bit more relief into it, so I'll need to compensate for that. And that's with the trem sitting flat. I just backed off the screws. So I'm confident, and there's plenty of travel in the saddles as well. So I'm pretty confident that this can be set up. So I'm going to get into it and see what we've actually got. Because actually, these early Korean Squiers are quite nice guitars. So the first long video that I did on this channel was a restoration of a customer's black version of exactly the same guitar, and it turned out really nice. It was a nice looking guitar. It played really well. Not worth massive amounts. These in good condition go for maybe 250 quid, something like that in the UK, and they're really good value for money for that. So I don't claim to be an expert on Squiers, but I've had a good few. And my first forays into messing around on electric guitars and taking them apart and fixing them was on some Squiers that I bought and rebuilt and upgraded. Um, and a lot of the time, that there is a kind of hierarchy of Squiers. So at the top end, you've got your Japanese built, your Silver Series. You've got your early MIJ ones, particularly the ones around 84 to 87 E serial ones, which are essentially exactly the same guitar as Fender branded Strats of that era, and absolutely gorgeous. I've had a few of those on the channel and really nice necks. So they are sort of top end, and they're certainly the equivalent to, if not better than, classic vibes nowadays. You've then got the kind of standard series Strats, which were then built, I think, initially in Japan. I think they then moved to Korea. I think they then went to China, and then I think they went to Indonesia, and there've been various places since. And there's always been the kind of standard level, which has got nice appointments and metallic parts of the logo. And then there's been affinities at various points, which have been narrow bodied, narrower nut, some of them are quite nice as well, particularly the early ones, the CY ones. Um, Tend to have black logos, but sometimes they've been upgraded so that you get two color logos. So there's a lot of variation. But the Korean ones sit somewhere in the middle because when I was messing with Squiers and I was messing with affinities and SEs, which are full thickness but fairly low quality appointments, um, these were the posh ones because they had the metallic logo and they are nice, so they've got nice necks, and they've got decent hardware, but cheap pickups. And I think when we get into this, we'll find this a plywood body, almost certain. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I always find that the interesting thing about the Squier brand is just how variable the perception of it is. Um, there is the Squiers are just cheap rubbish. Wouldn't touch them with a barge pole and get yourself a proper guitar. You know, you can get a decent, you can get yourself a MIM Stratocaster in reasonable shape for maybe 350, £400 in the UK if you look hard. Why waste your time? There's then the other side, which is Squier made some really nice guitars over the years, and they can be an absolute bargain. So the black one of these that I did, it played beautifully. It really did sound nice, and you know, it was a lot of guitar for the money, and it was nearly 40 years old at the time. Well, 35 years old, as is this. So I think it's worth putting some time into. So let's just get up close and have a look. So I mean, it's filthy. It's got knobs missing and strings missing and all that kind of superficial stuff. But actually, the body seems to be in pretty decent shape. The neck seems to be in pretty good shape. Nice rosewood. The nut is quite nicely shaped. We'll see whether it's properly cut. And then we've got a nice glossy headstock. Fender branding on it. So we've got die-cast tuners. Obviously one missing. I think I've probably got a matching one in my parts box. I'd be surprised if I don't. Glossed neck with a skunk stripe in decent shape. I think is that a serial number? Might have been at some point. It's not there anymore anyway. Yeah, I mean the bodywork's in decent shape. So two obvious things. One is that it's missing its ground wire, so that needs to be replaced. And the other is that the pattern of screw holes on the back plate, the middle one should be staggered. So whether that is correct for a Korean body or whether this is a parts caster and that's not in a Squier body, guess we'll get inside and have a look and find out. The other thing that is interesting is the Fender branded saddles and the full sized block on the trim. And that is correct for some models of Korean Strats from that era. So let's get in and see. Oh, the other thing is we've got these Alnico 5 pickups that have, well, two of them that have been put in and a black one. So I've not seen or heard good things about those particular pickups, but let's have an open mind. This might be, if the rest of it comes up nicely, this might be a great candidate for a really nice pickup upgrade on a budget, because there's some decent options out there these days. So here's what we have inside. So first things first, we've got a humbucker route and an Olympic white body, which has aged quite nicely. So that's fun. It's been heavily painted, shielding paint. I'll test the continuity, but that looks decent. Somebody's been in and changed the pickups, but not really the wiring, which is interesting because these little pots, I suppose they're functioning, but if it was me, I would start with a decent set of pots and a switch. But the interesting finds are we have got my favourite pickups. We've got iron gear. So this is a pig iron middle pickup because it's marked with an M. These ones, I don't know. I will have to try to investigate further. They have got some markings on them that I can't see at the moment. But they've got individual pole pieces. They say Alnico 5, so who am I to question that? But I haven't seen clear bases on anything I recognise. So interesting. But it's been carefully shielded in the back of the plate. So I think that might well be a candidate for just rewiring and see how those Alnico pickups are. The iron gear is a really good pickup. Alternatively, I might just buy the matching bridge and neck, and then we'll take it from there. So look inside the pocket; it's quite cleanly routed. No markings on it. No obvious signs of it having a different colour under at any point, so I don't think it's been repainted or anything like that. You can clearly see the plywood construction, which is the same on, I think, all of these Korean Squiers, apart from maybe Protons are the ones where they had solid wood. And then you can see the change in colour of the neck from the original colour to what it's aged to. This really lovely amber gloss. The holes aren't chewed up, so it hasn't been fitted on a different body or had any of that kind of stuff. Dusty, but and those frets look pretty decent. There's very little wear. That's a polish job rather than a leveling. And that nut is nicely shaped. You know, it's been smoothed off. It's not sitting too high. Black. Is it almost certainly plastic? But yeah, I mean that's quite nice. And the fret ends, the fretwork is nice. About a similar kind of standard as you would find on a Mexican player series, to be honest. I mean, it's not rolled as such, but it's got a nicely worn edge of the fingerboard as you would expect on a guitar of this age. Not much sprout. The ends look quite nicely dressed. So this is a nice neck. So pleased with that. And then pleased with what I find inside there. So one of the myths about the Korean guitars, particularly the early ones, is the idea that when the production moved over, they used up a lot of leftover Japanese parts from the Japanese production. And I think the fact that you've got these bridges with Fender stampings on them, which are similar to the Japanese ones, is quoted a lot as evidence of that. But I think that has been fairly comprehensively debunked, and for two reasons. One is that the Japanese factory that was making Squiers continued making exactly the same guitars with exactly the same components as Fenders for a while in the E serial and beyond. So there's no real. It's not like they were clearing out a lot of unused stock and shipping them across the to a different country. And the second is that the factory that Squier production moved to was in its own right a fully fledged guitar manufacturer in full production at the time, doing contract production for lots of manufacturers. So they would have had no need of a supply of leftover parts, and also they, I understand it, were contracted to produce the short-lived Korean Fender Stratocasters, which would also presumably have used this bridge. So I think no, it's probably not Japanese, but it is a decent quality bridge, and that's a good find. So far so good, really. Nice neck, nice looking, I'd say. It's very classic looking. It's got a nice logo and glossed headstock. It's got a proper rosewood board, vintage frets. The frets are in good shape. Assuming I can get it set up, and I see no reason why I won't be able to, then that will get this back up and running. The body's in nice condition and it looks great, so that is a plus, even though obviously it is a plywood body. It's a Korean Squier. um, the bridge is a positive. The electronics all seemed quiet when I plugged it in, apart from obviously the ground noise, which you would expect with the missing ground wire. So I may leave them, or since I'm going in anyway, I might just rewire it with decent components. And then what I might do is just actually leave it as it is, clean it up, set it up, and see how this combination of pickups works. And then if I do want to change it, then I can always do that by just adding in new electronics, and which cheap for a kit, and a couple of matching iron gear pickups, and then we'll have a killer sounding vintage style Strat. So yeah, good. Let's get into that.
So the next thing to take a look at was these tuners, and initially I was quite confident that I'd be able to just replace them. Um, but what I found is that because the screw placement of the location screws isn't at 45 degrees, then all the drop-in replacements that I could have used don't fit, and you would be left with this slightly off-centre dowelled hole just outside where the new tuners would sit, and that just wouldn't work for my OCD. So what I decided to do was to use some Fender Ping 2-pin tuners that I've got. I've got loads of these. I always take them out of Mexicans and put in the Fender classic gears because I love split post tuners. And they give me flexibility for the future as well, because if I take the time to actually drill these out to take the 2-pin tuners, then I can swap these out for classic gears if I decide to keep the guitar, or I can swap them out for lockers if I decide I want to move it on. They'll probably be more popular. And in the meantime, they'll be a good option, good quality tuner. So moving on now to have a look at the pickups and see what we've got. So just looking at the DC resistance on the bridge pickup, it's 6.19, and that is, according to Iron Gear's specs, that is a standard wound pig iron, not an overwound one. And obviously it's the middle pickup version, which is a bit of a problem because obviously it's reverse wound, reverse polarity, so it's not going to work correctly with another middle pickup in if it sits there. So one way or another, that needs to either come out or to move position. If we then look at the middle position, we've got 8.7, and then in the neck position we've got 8.4, so these are both a good bit hotter. So I thought I'd have a look at the parts bin and see what Strat pickups I've got and which ones might actually work. So I've got some Seymour Duncans. I've got that again is a middle pickup. That's a custom for Strat. I've then got a neck pickup, Little 59, which is a single coil sized humbucker. It's quite a nice pickup, but both are the wrong positions, and they'd both be a little bit, they'd both be worth together more than the guitar. So the next one I've got is this one, which is a Fender Noiseless. So that could go in there. But then the last one is a Chinese Little 59 clone I took out of something else. So that is a bridge pickup. It's a good bit hotter, being a single coil sized humbucker, and it's 4 conductor, so it gives me the option that if I put that one in, then I can coil split it at a later date. So that's a definite option. I think it'll fit in there, and what I'll probably do is put that one in and see how I got on with the guitar overall. So I'll put that in as a holding position. It's reasonable fit alongside the other AliExpress Alnicos that are in it, and then I'll make a decision on the longer term once I see if I can get the guitar up and running nicely. So it's time to crack on with the neck. So the first job is just to get rid of all the hardware off the headstock, and then that means I can level the neck ready for fret leveling. This was the moment of truth really, because if it couldn't be leveled, then you wouldn't be able to do the fret job properly, but it worked perfectly. And then it's moving on to fitting the new 2-pin tuners. So this can be quite tricky, but I've got a jig which I bought, which means that you can line them all up very precisely, and they're actually quite straightforward to fit using this. And then I trial fitted the new tuners to make sure that they all fit correctly and align correctly. And then I take them all back off again so I can do the fret job. So first thing first is just to check the frets for level. There were a few rocks, probably about 5 or 6 at various different places around the neck. And once you get to that sort of level, it's easier just to do as light as possible a full fret level, because it gives you a more consistent result than trying to work in 5 different little places and get a good outcome. And then once they're all level, you go back over them all again with the crowning file to restore the crown and keep the intonation and tuning correct. And then it's back in again with the fret rocker just to double check. And in this case, as is often the case, I found one fret that was still a little bit high, so I went in and spot leveled that. And then finally move in with the sandpaper to work up through the grits and remove all the machining mark or the filing marks and then the sanding marks, which is time consuming but quite satisfying. And then you end up at the end with some really lovely highly polished frets, which are a pleasure to play on. Final step before I get to the final polishing is just to knock off any sharp edges off the ends, and then I polish those as well. And then this is now on to the application of Monte Presso, which is a treatment for the rosewood, which comes up beautifully. And then when that's done, final polish, and then a wax. This is me just trimming off the dowels that I'd put into the holes that had been filled, and then that gets sanded up through the grits and then polished, and then the tuners are back on and job's done. So that's the neck done. Full level crown polish, board's been cleaned and fed, and polished up all the hardware and fitted some Fender genuine tuners. So ready to go back on. So that's the bodywork done. So cleaned, machine polished, cleaned again and then waxed. It's come up well. There's a few tiny little dings, but nothing that you wouldn't expect from a 30 something, 34-year-old guitar, assuming this is a 1991. The other thing is that I love the colour differential between the original colour under the pickguard, which I guess is Olympic white, and then how much that has aged into this kind of mellow blonde colour. So that's really lovely. Then we're on to the hardware. So strip the bridge down completely, because they tend to not get cleaned very often and they do attract a lot of crap over the working lives. So give it a thorough clean, degrease, and then oil it up before reassembly. I like to have a little competition with myself when I'm reassembling a bridge to see how accurately I can rough in the intonation. It never quite works, but it gets pretty close. So that's the pickup fitted and the pickguard wired up. I haven't split the coil at the moment. I'm just going to see whether I actually like the pickup with these other pickups, or whether I'm just going to chuck the lot. If I do decide to keep them, then I will rewire it and I will do a coil split at that point. So time to reassemble the neck and then get her strung up.
So here's where we've got to with this one. It's alive, as you can hear. I replaced the iron gear middle pickup that was in the bridge, and I put in this cheapo little 59 clone. Actually sounds okay. Less impressed with these AliExpress specials. They're just they're a bit spangly at the top end and a bit nasal, I think. So the pickups are not great, and which is a shame because the rest of the guitar really is. The body's come up beautifully. The neck is really nice. I mean, these Korean Strats have got that reputation. I gave it a full level crown and polish, mainly because it was just a little bit unleveled, probably from the factory. And you know, if I was going to be doing it up anyway, I might as well get started on that path. So it plays. I've got it set up with 7,000 relief, and I've got the action set at about 1.5 mil all the way across, and I've intonated it. I haven't yet adjusted the nut for the fact that I've leveled it, which I will do. But I just wanted to get it up and running and see whether it could be set up and was therefore savable. And the answer is yes, completely. So I think, given how nice it is and it does play beautifully, I think it deserves better electronics. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use the iron gear pig iron that I've got for the middle. I'm going to use some. I'm going to order matching pig irons for the neck and the bridge. And then I've got a wiring kit in my spares box because I've got everything in a spares box. So I'm going to wire it up properly with full size pots, orange drop, switchcraft, cloth wiring, and do it a proper job. Because this is a really nice little guitar, and I'm really pleased with it. And for considering that at this point it's cost me absolutely nothing, then I think I can afford to spend 50 quid on a set of pickups for it, which will, because they're 25 quid each, these iron gears are fantastic value. And I think that's important. You know, you don't want to go too over the top on a guitar, which is only of limited value, but it is a 34-year-old guitar. So welcome back. So this is the Squier Strat, a couple of weeks on. So I've been playing this and enjoying this, and amongst being busy doing other things. But I've now got the pickups and the wiring kit ready to go in. So I'm going to perform some open heart surgery on it today and get rid of these low cost AliExpress type pickups and give the guitar some justice. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to recut the nut so that that's cut correctly so that I can then do a full setup. So in the end I went for iron gear, and I had a pig iron middle pickup, so I went for a pig iron neck pickup to go with it, and a Texas loco to go in the bridge, which is slightly hotter, and it gives, I believe, about 7.5k in the bridge and about 6k for the other two, which gives a sort of bit of a sort of extra boost in the bridge position, and is generally quite a nice way to balance up a Strat. So we'll see what that sounds like. So let's just measure these string heights. So the high E is coming in at about 16 thou, which is where you'd want it, so that's good. B 23, 24, it's a little bit high. G is very high, that's sitting 34-ish. $26. 22. 21.5. And the low E is 19.5. So actually the outer strings are cut to about where you would want them. The middle ones need to come down a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and do all of those. So that's the nut slots cut to height, and then the final step is just shaving a bit off the top of the nut so the strings sit at the correct level. They're a little bit deep at the moment. So I'll do that next when I take the strings off, and then I'll get into the electronics. Okay, so here is the exiting stage left loom, and I don't know, I think I played with these a little bit over the last couple of weeks, and I'm slightly tempted by looking at this loom and realising that these are mini pots of 500k.
then actually these neck and middle pickups are probably sounded too shrill because of that, whereas the humbucker sounded fine. So I may give them another chance with a proper wiring job in a different guitar. So I'm going to save this one for now, and then probably reuse those or keep them in my spares box, and they will live to ride another day because I don't like throwing out stuff. And they are Alnico 5, and you know, they should be kind of a bit less shrill than they sounded, and the pots could well be the culprit. So that's that. And then moving on, we've got the original pick guard here. So it's been copper shielded on the back. No reason to take that off. It is the original guard. It's non-standard sized holes, but it fits that body, and you can see the aging. And the other thing that I've established in my couple of weeks off was that the hole pattern on the back of this body is entirely correct for a Korean Squier of this age. They did have the parallel holes, so that's another question mark or question solved. So let's get this wired up. So here is the wiring kit I'm going to use. So this is out of my spares box, and this is from my usual parts supplier. This is the more budget level one, which is perfectly good. It's just not quite as fancy. So it's got 250k full-sized audio taper pots. These are alpha rather than CTS, so they are a little bit cheaper. Functionally they're exactly the same, and they've got a nice taper, and they feel nice and smooth as well, so I quite like them. I don't see there's a downside to that. We've got an orange drop for the tone, we've got a metal switch, and then we've got a switchcraft jack. The other thing that's different in this kit from the fancier kit is that it uses plastic wiring, which is perfectly functional, but I don't like working with it. So I'm going to substitute from my pile of cloth pushback wiring, and then it also supplies some grounding wire for grounding the pots together, which I've got loads of, so I'll use one of my existing reels of that and stick that in stores. So that's what's going in. So here's a quick time lapse of me doing the actual wiring. I wouldn't presume to do a tutorial on how to wire up a Strat because the internet is absolutely full of them. But if you do want a really good, clear set of videos on how to do wiring in general, I highly recommend the YouTube channel of Six String Supplies, which is a UK based part supplier, but his tutorial videos are fantastic. So give them a look if you want to know a bit more about this whole process. And there we go, that's the finished pickguard all wired up. So I've wired up the bridge and middle tones together so that I can tame the Texas loco on the bridge if I need to. I've got the iron gears in, and then everything's neatly tidied up, ready to drop back in.
Okay, so here's the finished article. What can I say? So a few chords. Neck, middle, bridge. Really nice balanced tones. I like these pickups a lot. So middle. bridge. Nice, nice balance. So I like these pickups a lot. They sound very stratty, they sound nice and full. It's got a lovely neck pickup. And I have to say this guitar's got a lovely neck. It really is nice. It's very similar to the Japanese ones that they were doing in the late 80s. I don't know if it's exactly the same car. Feels like it. Feels like the same quality. So these are, I think, rising in value at the moment. They're sort of the next thing on from the Japanese rediscovery. 35 years on, well, I think these ones from the late 80s, early 90s, and the Korean builds are doing the same. So very pleased with this. It's a very nice guitar, and I've enjoyed bringing it back to life. So this will be going up for sale on my Reverb shop shortly. So if you are interested, have a look at it there or message me direct. And thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope to see you back in the shack soon. So this guitar is now up for sale on my Reverb shop. If you just go to reverb.com and search for Alan's Guitar Shack. Alternatively, my website is alansguitarshack.com. Hope to see you there. Thanks a lot.